In the silent and imposing corridors of the Vatican, where faith should serve as a shield against any evil, an ancient fear re-emerges in a new form. Experienced exorcists, men of unwavering faith, have begun to report something disturbing: the presence of young vampire creatures of supernatural beauty and irresistible charm lurking in the shadows at the very heart of the Church. These beings, endowed with almost angelic seduction, confuse even the most watchful eyes and put the faith of the priests themselves to the test. But how can such audacity be explained? How did dark forces manage to penetrate one of the most protected places by Christian faith? Some say it is just a modern myth, a fantasy created by collective fear. Others, however, believe that these vampires are not merely mythological beings, but manifestations of something much deeper and more diabolical, a kind of test for human faith. Today, we will explore the secrets and mysteries surrounding these accounts, delving into the boundary between myth and reality, investigating how angelic figures might conceal damned souls. The story is not just about the clash between holy men and creatures of the dark, but also reveals humanity's obsession with the unknown and the seduction of the forbidden. Get ready for a dark and intriguing journey where myths and reality intertwine. By the end of this video, you will have understood how modern vampires' beautiful and treacherous challenge not only faith but also our very perception of good and evil. The news of young vampires in the Vatican left many perplexed, especially when it came directly from the accounts of experienced exorcists. These men, accustomed to confronting demons and expelling malevolent forces, now face an unexpected threat: creatures of supernatural beauty and seductive behavior. They walk the sacred halls with an almost celestial elegance, confusing the perceptions of those around them. The Church, known for its firm stance against evil, now finds itself challenged by an enemy that hides in plain sight. Unlike the classic vampires, grotesque and feared, these young vampires seem to defy known standards, bringing a mixture of fascination and terror. Their presence provokes an internal conflict between fear and attraction, something that few priests know how to confront. Some believe they are merely symbolic figures of a lost generation, young people obsessed with Gothic aesthetics and profane rituals. Others, however, insist that there is something deeper and darker behind this apparent vanity. The Vatican, traditionally seen as a refuge from any diabolical manifestation, now becomes the stage for a spiritual and psychological battle. Doubt settles in the hearts of those dedicated to faith, as the presence of these young vampires directly challenges the concept of purity and holiness. For many, the almost angelic beauty of these vampires is an affront, a carefully constructed trap by the forces of evil to lead the faithful astray. To understand this phenomenon, it is necessary to delve into the cultural and spiritual roots that shape the concept of the vampire over the centuries. Beauty and charisma are not common traits in the classical representations of these beings, raising the question: are we facing a new vampire lineage, adapted to modernity and the cult of appearance? Or have vampires themselves learned to use human vanity as a weapon to conquer and corrupt even the holiest places? Seduction has always been a defining trait of vampires in popular culture, but never before has it been used so intensely and strategically. These young vampires circulating in the Vatican not only captivate with their beauty, but also manipulate hidden emotions and desires. Their presence evokes a subtle enchantment, that confuses the mind and weakens the spiritual resistance of even the most devout. It's as if the very concept of purity is challenged by the irresistible presence of these creatures. Some occult scholars believe that this new vampiric approach is the result of a planned evolution, an adaptation to the modern world where appearance has become one of the greatest weapons of social control. The idea of vampires who captivate with beauty harkens back to fallen angelic figures, beings who lost their purity but still carry a celestial appearance. This combination of elegance and danger is a powerful tool to infiltrate sacred environments and sow doubt and perdition. Behind this fascination lies psychological manipulation, a carefully crafted strategy to break the moral resistance of those who face these creatures. Vanity, the pursuit of aesthetic perfection, and the idolization of youth become lethal weapons in the hands of these modern vampires. Thus, what seemed like a simple matter of faith transforms into a complex game of emotional domination, where the victim doesn't even realize they are being manipulated until it's too late. The Church, aware of this new type of threat, faces an unprecedented dilemma: how to combat a force that not only challenges Christian morality, but also enchants and seduces those who should fight it. The answer seems to lie not only in spiritual strength, but in understanding how seduction and beauty have become instruments of social and spiritual control. The fight against these modern vampires requires an approach that transcends the traditional, confronting not only the darkness but also the deceptive shine that accompanies it. The classic image of the vampire has undergone a drastic transformation over the past few decades, driven by pop culture and media entertainment. In the past, vampires were depicted as dark and grotesque monsters, feared for their cruelty and thirst for blood. However, over time, these creatures gained more human and attractive traits, becoming seductive and captivating figures. Modern films, series, and books have solidified the image of the vampire as a desirable being, capable of evoking both fascination and fear. One of the most striking examples of this transformation is the series Trinity Blood, which combines religious and vampiric elements in a post-apocalyptic future. In this narrative, vampires coexist with the Catholic Church in an environment of constant conflict and tension. The vampiric figure is not only a symbol of evil, but also a representation of political and social forces in collision. This reflects how contemporary culture has reshaped the concept of the vampire, evolving from a mere monster to a metaphor for power, desire, and tragedy. This humanization of vampires in fiction has directly influenced how people perceive these figures in real life. Gothic movements and urban subcultures have adopted the dark and elegant aesthetic, reinforcing the image of ethereal and dangerous beauty. Young people drawn to the vampiric aesthetic began to adopt behaviors that reflect these creatures, as if they sought to embody the duality between purity and perdition. The Vatican, upon realizing this phenomenon, began to worry about the spiritual and psychological impact this culture might have on the faithful. The duality between light and shadow has intensified, as modern vampires carry with them a symbolic weight that goes beyond the traditional myth. Now, they represent an internal struggle between desire and morality, beauty and decadence. The influence of pop culture has not only shaped the collective imagination, but also made the figure of the vampire more complex and intriguing, capable of seducing minds that were once devoted to the light. The Church now faces an unexpected challenge: distinguishing myth from reality in a scenario where the line between both is becoming increasingly blurred. In response to the growing number of reports about the presence of young vampires in the Vatican, the Church began to review its spiritual defense protocols. Traditionally, exorcists were trained to deal with classic demonic possessions involving evil spirits and satanic forces. However, the complexity of this new threat requires a completely different approach. It's not just about expelling demons, but facing beings who manipulate through beauty and charisma. The first reports caused a mix of disbelief and unease within the highest echelons of the Church. Many priests believed it was all just an exaggeration or collective hysteria, influenced by pop culture and the contemporary fascination with vampires. However, when renowned exorcists began to report disturbing encounters with young individuals of angelic appearance but carrying a dark aura, the Vatican decided to investigate deeply. The situation became so serious that secret protocols were updated, including new rituals and practices involving spiritual discernment and psychological resistance. One of the methods adopted involves reassessing the personal faith of the exorcists, strengthening their conviction to resist emotional manipulation. Furthermore, priests are advised to avoid direct confrontations when they perceive that the presence of these youths evokes a feeling of fascination or intense discomfort. Spiritual preparation now also includes mental strengthening so that the supernatural beauty does not corrupt the perception of truth. The training now focuses not only on expelling demons, but on resisting the power of seduction. The Church has also investigated the relationship between these young vampires and cultural movements that glorify the vampiric aesthetic, analyzing whether there is an influence of profane rituals or modern occult practices. There are rumors that secret cults, which venerate the vampire figure as a divine and seductive entity, may be promoting a form of indoctrination disguised as a lifestyle. Therefore, combating the vampiric presence in the Vatican does not only mean expelling evil forces, but also confronting a new form of cult that challenges the sanctity of sacred spaces. To fully understand the threat of young vampires in the Vatican, it is essential to analyze the psychology behind their seduction. These beings not only enchant with their appearance, but also exploit emotional and spiritual vulnerabilities of their victims. Their presence evokes a feeling of vulnerability and inexplicable desire, as if the very soul is drawn to an irresistible force. The ability to manipulate emotions becomes their primary weapon, leaving even the most firm priests exposed to contradictory and confusing thoughts. Psychologists and human behavior experts suggest that extreme beauty and supernatural charm provoke a kind of emotional blindness in which the victim fails to perceive the danger signs. This resembles a subtle state of hypnosis, where fascination takes over and weakens rational judgment. When this seduction occurs in a sacred environment like the Vatican, the impact is even more devastating, as it directly challenges the faith and purity of heart that priests cultivate. The sense of comfort and familiarity, mixed with an ethereal beauty, makes modern vampires almost treated like angelic figures. The line between the divine and the profane blurs, and those who should combat evil end up hesitating. For many exorcists, the great difficulty is not in physical strength or direct confrontation, but in resisting the enchantment that contaminates the mind and spirit. It's as if the battle is fought not with swords and prayers, but with the ability to maintain mental clarity in the face of temptation. In light of this, the Church has emphasized strengthening faith as a barrier against the influence of these vampires. Spiritual training, constant Bible readings, and purification rituals are performed more frequently. The intention is to ensure that the spirit remains steadfast even when confronted with the most beautiful of enemies. However, the great dilemma remains: how to combat something that challenges human nature itself by provoking desire and fascination in an environment where purity should reign. Although much is said about the presence of young vampires in the Vatican, little is known about their true origin. Some theologians and occultism scholars believe that they could be descendants of ancient vampiric lineages that evolved over the centuries, adapting to cultural and social changes. Others speculate that these beings are the result of profane rituals secretly performed, invoking demonic entities that take on seductive forms to deceive the faithful. An intriguing theory suggests that these modern vampires are the result of a profane alliance between ancient vampire cults and contemporary occult groups. The pursuit of absolute power and eternal youth may have led some followers to make dark pacts, ensuring not only immortality, but also a stunning appearance. This would explain how they managed to infiltrate sacred environments without raising immediate suspicion, using their almost divine beauty as a perfect camouflage. Furthermore, reports of cults that worship the vampire figure as a superior entity have become more frequent, especially in Europe and Latin America. These groups preach spiritual liberation through the acceptance of the vampiric essence, interpreting the quest for eternity as a path to transcend human limitations. The Vatican, aware of these movements, has begun discreet investigations to identify possible connections between these cults and the events occurring within its walls. Some researchers still hypothesize that these vampires may not be physical creatures, but spiritual manifestations fueled by moral decay and the idolization of youth. In this context, the figure of the young vampire becomes a dark reflection of modern society itself, where the relentless pursuit of beauty and power spiritualizes dark forces. The truth is that regardless of their origin, the presence of these beings represents a profound enigma that challenges not only the Christian faith, but also human understanding of the boundaries between the sacred and the profane. The fight against young vampires in the Vatican is not only a physical or spiritual battle, but also a war against the ideas that these beings represent. Seduction, eternal youth, and transcendental beauty have become symbols of power that directly challenge traditional Christian values. For many within the Church, the real danger is not just in the presence of these vampires, but in what they symbolize: the loss of purity and the corruption of sacred virtues. The Vatican's strategy now involves more than just simple exorcism rituals. Experts in demonology, anthropology, and sociology have been summoned to understand the cultural and spiritual impact that these figures exert. The Church is determined to combat not only the vampires themselves, but also the influence their image has on the faithful. This includes awareness campaigns, clarifying the public about the hidden dangers behind the glorification of beauty and immortal youth. Amidst this scenario, the Church faces a profound dilemma: how to preserve faith and sanctity in a world increasingly fascinated by the profane. The solution seems to lie in a spiritual renewal, strengthening the essence of Christian faith so that it can resist the charms of the modern world. The restoration of spiritual purity becomes a priority, and new guidelines are established to strengthen the mental and emotional resilience of priests and the faithful. The future of the spiritual battle against modern vampires remains uncertain, but one thing is clear: As long as beauty continues to be seen as synonymous with virtue and power, the threat will persist. The Vatican must not only face these beings directly, but also promote a cultural transformation that recovers the true meaning of spirituality and purity. Only then will it be possible to restore peace in the sacred corridors and protect faith from the seduction of darkness. The battle against young vampires in the Vatican goes far beyond a simple spiritual confrontation. It represents the clash between the sacred and the profane, between the purity of faith and the seduction of darkness. These creatures, with their angelic beauty and irresistible charisma, challenge the deepest values of the Church and modern society. They not only question traditional morality, but also manipulate the emotional and spiritual vulnerabilities of the faithful, putting at risk the purity and conviction of priests and devout followers. Throughout this video, we explored how modern vampires infiltrated one of the holiest places in the world, turning the fight against evil into a battle for the preservation of spiritual integrity. They are more than monsters, more than mythological figures. They are symbols of a society that worships eternal youth, flawless beauty, and the pursuit of immortal power. And it is this adoration that becomes their primary weapon. The Vatican now faces a new form of threat, a threat that requires more than traditional rituals and exorcisms, but a renewal of faith, a rebuilding of spiritual foundations. The fight is not only in the sacred halls, but in the mind and heart of each one of us. The real challenge is understanding how to resist the seduction of beauty, power, and eternal youth, without losing sight of what truly matters: the purity of faith and the essence of good. So, what do you think of this intriguing story of young vampires in the Vatican? Are they simply a metaphor, or a real threat that challenges the boundaries between myth and reality? Leave your opinion in the comments below and share your thoughts on how this spiritual struggle might affect the modern world. If you enjoyed this content and want to explore more mysteries like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any new videos. And of course, if this video has stirred your mind and perception, share it with your friends and help spread the mystery. We'll see you in the next video where more dark secrets will be unveiled. Until then, may the light of faith always shine on your path.